Viewers at home, you are welcome to my presentation on flexible budget. Flexible budget. If this is your first time of coming across my channel, or if you have not subscribed previously, please don't forget to click on the red subscribe button, and beside it you will see a bell notification icon. Please go ahead to click it so that you will be notified each time I drop a new video. So, flexible budget. Flexible budget is the budget designed to adjust the budget cost levels to suit the level of activity actually attained. Flexible budget is the budget designed to adjust the budget cost levels to suit the level of activity actually attained. A flexible budget is a budget which, by recognizing different cost behavior, is a budget which, by recognizing different cost behavior patterns, are designed to change as the volume of activity changes. It is a budget which, by recognizing different cost behavior patterns, are designed to change as the volume of activity changes. That is flexible budget. So, steps in preparing flexible budget. Steps in preparing flexible budget. The following steps are the steps for preparing flexible budget. Step 1, determine cost behavior pattern. That is step 1. Determine cost behavior pattern. Determine cost behavior pattern. That is, deciding whether costs are fixed, variable, or semi-variable. By determining the cost behavior pattern, that means you want to determine whether the costs are fixed, variable, or a semi-variable cost. That is step 1. Step 2, calculate the budget cost allowance for each of the semi-variable costs. Calculate the budget cost allowance for each of the semi-variable costs. Calculate the budget cost allowance for each of the semi-variable costs. To calculate the budget cost allowance, budget cost allowance is equal to budgeted fixed cost. Budgeted fixed cost plus number of units multiplied by variable cost per unit. That will give you the budget cost allowance. Budget cost allowance is budgeted fixed cost plus this one will give you the variable cost, the budgeted variable cost. That is number of units multiplied by the variable cost per unit. So that means you have the budgeted fixed cost plus budgeted variable cost. That will give you the budget cost allowance. Note, semi-variable cost. Semi-variable costs need to be splitted into fixed and variable components. Semi-variable cost, anytime you are given the semi-variable cost, it needs to be splitted into the fixed and the variable component using high and low method for cost allowance to be calculated. For you to be able to calculate the budget cost allowance, you need to split the semi-variable cost into fixed and the variable component using high and low method. That is the steps for preparing the flexible budget. I've told you that a flexible budget, I said, is a budget designed to adjust the budget cost levels to suit the level of activity actually attained. I also said it is a budget which, by recognizing different cost behavior patterns, are designed to change as the volume of activity changes. So that is flexible budget. I've equally given the steps for preparing the flexible budget. Steps for preparing the flexible budget. Number one is to determine the cost behavior pattern. That is, you are going to determine the fixed cost, the variable cost, and semi-variable cost. The second step is to calculate the budget cost allowance for each of the semi-variable costs. So where you are going to use high and low method to segregate your semi-variable cost into fixed and the variable component for the cost allowance to be calculated. So I want to take a question as work example. This question is obtained from BPP ACCA study test. BPP ACCA study test. So, the question: prepare a budget for 20 x6 for direct labor cost and overhead expenses of a production department, flexed and activity levels of 80%, 90%, and 100%, using information listed below. 1. Direct labor hourly rate is expected to be $3.75. $3.75. Then 2. 100% activity represents 60,000 direct labor hours. 3. Variable cost. We have indirect labor, $0.75 per direct labor hour. Consumable supplies, 0.375 per direct labor hour. We also have canteen and other welfare services, 6% of direct and indirect labor costs. 4. Semi-variable costs are expected to relate to the direct labor hours in the same manner as for the last 5 years. Then we have for year 20x1 to 20x5. 20x1 we have direct labor hours to be 64,000 and the semi-variable cost 20,800. 20x2 59,000 direct labor hours and $19,800. 20x3 53,000 direct labor hours and 18,600. 20x4 49,000 direct labor hours and $17,800. 20x5 40,000 direct labor hours based on estimate, and the semi-variable cost was $16,000 estimate. Then we have 5. Fixed cost. Fixed cost comprises depreciation of $18,000, maintenance of $10,000, insurance of $4,000, rates $15,000, management salaries of $25,000. Inflation is to be ignored. B. Calculate the budget cost allowance, that is expected expenditure for 20x6, assuming that 57,000 direct labor hours are worked. That is the question. This question is obtained from Performance Management ACCA study test by BPP. So I want to solve the question. So the solution to the question. So we have the solution. Solution. So you want to prepare the flexible budget. Flexible budget. You are given different capacity. You have to prepare a flexible budget based on the following capacity. The capacity you are given, you have for 80% capacity, 90% capacity, and 100% capacity. You were also told that 100% activity represents 60,000 direct labor hours. 60,000 direct labor hours. Now, back to our flexible budget. You are given different capacity. Then you want to prepare flexible budget based on 80% capacity, 90% capacity, and 100% capacity. You are equally given the direct labor hour. Direct labor hours. You are given the direct labor hour for 100% capacity, and you were told it is 60,000 hours. For 100% capacity, the direct labor is 60,000 hours. Therefore, for 90% capacity, you calculate 90% of 60,000. 90% of 60,000, that will give us 54,000 direct labor hours. Then for 80% capacity, you calculate 80% of 60,000, and that will also give us 48,000 direct labor hours. But in case you are not given for 100% capacity, you may be told that the direct labor for 90% capacity, suppose you are given the direct labor for 90% capacity to be 54,000. And if that is what you are given, then to calculate for 100% capacity, since this is 90%, so to calculate for 100, you multiply by 100 divided by 90. So before you can calculate for other levels of activities. So now I've told you that your flexible budget, you are going to have the variable cost plus fixed cost plus the semi-variable cost. Now the currency is dollar, US dollar. So the first cost element or item you are given is direct labor. You are given the direct note 1. Note 1. You were told the direct labor hourly rate. The direct labor hourly rate is expected to be $3.75. The direct labor hourly rate is $3.75. So in that case, to calculate the amount of direct labor cost now, direct labor the cost. Since it is $3.75 per hour and at 80% capacity, 48,000 direct labor hours were worked. 48,000 times 3.75, and that will give us $180,000. $180,000. For 90% capacity, you have 54,000 hours times $3.75. It is $3.75 per hour, and that will give us 202,500. And for 100% capacity, and which is 60,000 hours, 60,000 times 3.75, and that will give us $225,000. That is the direct labor cost. Aside the direct labor cost, we have the other variable cost given in the question. Other variable cost. You know direct labor is also a variable cost. Then you are given other variable cost aside that direct labor. So now back to the question. Note 2. You were told 100% activity represents 60,000 direct labor hours, which shall be considered. Then note 3. Variable cost. Indirect labor is 0.75 per direct labor hour. Indirect labor is 0.75. Now, you can determine the amount of an indirect labor cost since you have been told that it is 0.75 per direct labor hour. So you have indirect labor, which is 0.75 as given in the question, per direct labor hour. The amount of direct labor hours at 80% capacity is 48,000. You now have 48,000 times 0.75, and that will give us $36,000. At 90% capacity, you have 54,000 direct labor hours times 0.75, and that will give us 40,500. At 100% capacity, you have 60,000 direct labor hours times 0.75, and then we have $45,000. That is for indirect labor. After indirect labor, we still have other variable cost. Aside the indirect labor, we still have other variable cost. And that includes, we have considered the direct labor. Then we have consumable supplies, which is 0.375 per direct labor hour. Consumable supplies is given to be 0.375 per direct labor hour. 0.375 per direct labor hour. That is consumable supplies. Consumable supplies. Consumable supplies is given to be $0.375 per direct labor hour. So 0.375 multiplied by 48,000, and that will give us 18,000. 18,000. Then 0.375 times 54,000. Then we have 20,250. 20,250. 0.375 multiplied by 60,000. Then we have 22,500. 22,500. That is for consumable supplies. Then we still have some other variable costs. We have canteens. canteen and other welfare services, which is 6% of direct and indirect labor cost. Two things were put together, direct and indirect labor cost. 6% of it will make up of the consumable supplies, consumable and other welfare services. So consumables, and other welfare services. You have consumables and other welfare. We're told that it is 6% of both the direct and indirect. Then that means you will need to sum up the direct and indirect labor for the purpose of consumable and other welfare service calculation. Your direct labor, you have 180,000. Direct labor 180,000. This is working. Direct labor. Let me say working one. Direct labor, you have 180,000. Then we have 202,500. And then we have 225,000. 225,000. Then we also have indirect labor. Indirect labor. Our indirect labor, we have 36,000, we have 40,500 and 45,000. Indirect labor 36,000, 40,500 and 45,000. Then you sum it up. You have 180,000 plus 36,000. Then we have 216,000. $216,000. Then we have 202,500. 202,500 plus 40,500. And that is 243,000. Then we have 225,000 plus 45,000. And that will give us 270,000. Remember in note 3, you were told that consumable, and you were told that the canteen and other welfare service is 6% of the sum of the two. So that means the amount that will be charged as is canteen, not consumables. Sorry, this is canteen. Canteen and other welfare service. So, since we were told that the canteen and other welfare service, we were told is 6% of direct and indirect labor. So that means our canteen and other welfare service, 6% of direct and indirect labor. So 6% of 270,000, and that will give us 16,200. 6% of 243,000. Then we have 14,580. 6% of 216,000. Then we have 12,000 960. That is the amount that will be recorded as canteen and other welfare service. So we can record that now. So canteen and other welfare service, we have 12,960. Then we have 14,580 and 16,200 as calculated below. That is in our working one. So that is all about canteen and other welfare service. Note 4. Semi-variable costs are expected to relate to direct labor hours in the same manner as for the last 5 years. So you were given from year 20x1 to 20x5. You are given direct labor hours and the amount of semi-variable costs for each of the periods. Now you are given that semi-variable cost for year 20x1 to 20x5. I've told you that for our purpose, you are going to use the high and low method to segregate this semi-variable cost into fixed and variable components. You use the high and low method to segregate it. For better understanding, I will advise you watch my lecture on cost separation using high and low method. So now you look at the activity level. Here is 64, 59, 53, 49, 40. The highest is 64,000. This is the highest activity and this is the highest cost. The lowest activity, the lowest among the cost and among the activity now is 40,000. So the lowest is 40,000 and the cost is 16,000. So you are going to use the high and low method to segregate that. Now let's have the semi-variable cost working 2 for semi-variable cost. Working 2. Semi-variable cost. You have activity. Our activity is our direct labor hours. Direct labor hours. And then we have semi-variable cost in dollar. The highest activity is 64,000 direct labor hours. And the semi-variable cost at that level of activity is given to be 20,800 as underlined. The lowest activities, is 40,000 direct labor hours, and the cost at that level is 16,000. I've told you that the high and low method, if you have watched my lecture on high and low method, I've told you that the high and low method can also be called the range method. You know in statistics that range is the difference between the highest and the low level of activities. So the difference now will be variable cost of the difference between this is 14,000. 24,000. 64,000 minus 40,000, that is 24,000. 20,800 minus 16,000, then the difference is 4,800. Then the variable cost per direct labor hour will now be 4,800 divided by the 24,000, and that will give us the amount of the variable cost per direct labor hour, and that is $0.2. Is $0.20. That is the variable cost per direct labor hour. And remember that the total cost is the sum of the variable cost and the fixed cost. So now you should remove the variable cost from the total cost to get the fixed cost, since total cost equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. You know your variable cost, then you want to determine the fixed cost, meaning that fixed cost will be total cost minus variable cost. For better understanding, try to watch my lecture on high and low method. Now, we want to determine the amount of that cost that will be fixed. We want to determine the amount that will be fixed cost element of our semi-variable cost. Fixed cost element of the semi-variable cost. I've told you that you may use the low level, you may use the high level. You are given the total cost. By total cost, I mean the amount of semi-variable cost you were given. The semi-variable cost you were given at the highest activity level is 20,800. 20,800. So that is the semi-variable cost at the high level of activity, 20,800. And the semi-variable cost you were given at the lowest activity level is 16,000. So we have 16,000. From there, from our total cost, you less your variable cost. You have determined your variable cost per direct labor hour, and that has been calculated to be 0.20. So 0.20, and remember the high level of activity represents 64,000 direct labor hour. So to get the amount of variable cost now, we have 64,000 times 0.20, and that will give you the amount of variable cost at the highest level of activity, then which is 12,800. If you remove 12,800 from 20,800, you'll be left with 8,000. That 8,000 represents the amount of semi-variable costs that are fixed. The fixed element of the semi-variable cost is 8,000. Then if you use the low level of activity, remember low level of activity represents 40,000 direct labor hour. It represents 40,000 direct labor hour as given. And your variable cost per unit is $0.2. 0.2 times 40,000, and that will give us 8,000. If you remove 8,000 from 16,000, then you'll be left with 8,000. That 8,000 is the fixed element of the semi-variable cost. Irrespective of the level of activity, the fixed cost must remain the same. That is why you have 8,000 and 8,000 as well. So now we have segregated the semi-variable cost into fixed and the variable component. Now, for each capacity level, now we want to determine the semi-variable cost for each capacity level. Remember, semi-variable costs are partly fixed and partly variable. Semi-variable costs are partly fixed and partly variable. Now, the 80% capacity represents 48,000. So we want to determine the semi-variable cost now. Semi-variable cost. Semi-variable cost for 80% capacity now. 80% capacity, which represents 48,000 direct labor hours. Now, how much of it will be variable cost? Variable cost. Remember, variable cost per direct labor hour have been calculated to be 0.2. 0.2 times 48,000. That will give you the amount that are variable. 48,000 times 0.2, and we have 9,600. That means 9,600 are variable. Then the fixed component of semi-variable cost. The fixed component of semi-variable cost has been calculated to be 8,000. If you add 8,000 to 9,600, then you have 17,600. So that is the semi-variable element. So you have semi-variable element, 17,600. Before I consider the semi-variable, let me sum up this cost to get the total variable cost. Total variable cost. Total variable cost. 180,000 plus 36,000 plus 18,000 plus 12,960. And that is total 246,960. 246,960. That is the variable cost. Then, at 90% capacity, 202,500 plus 40,500 plus 20,250 plus 14,580, and that is total 277,830. 277,830. Then, for 100% capacity, we have 225,000 plus 45,000 plus 222 and plus 22,500 plus 16,200, and that is total 308,700. 308,700. Then we consider the semi-variable cost. Semi-variable cost at 80% capacity, and our semi-variable cost is 17,600 as calculated. 17,600. 17,600. Then at 90% capacity, 90% capacity represents 54,000 direct labor hours. How much of it as how much is the semi-variable cost at 90% capacity? Semi-variable cost at 90% capacity. So at 90% capacity, which amounts to 54,000 direct labor hours. So how much will be variable? Variable cost. Remember, our variable cost per direct labor hour is 0.20 multiplied by 54,000, and that will give us 0.2 times 54,000. Then we have $10,800. Then our fixed element, the fixed element of the semi-variable cost is 8,000 as calculated. 8,000. If you add 8,000 to 10,800, then you'll be having 18,800. 18,800. So our semi-variable cost is 18,800. Then you can also compute the semi-variable cost at 100% capacity, and 100% capacity represents 60,000 direct labor hours. 100% capacity, which amounted to 60,000 direct labor hours. 60,000 direct labor hours. So the variable component will be 0.2 times 60,000. 60,000 times 0.2, then we have 12,000. While the fixed element of semi-variable cost is 8,000. If you add the 8,000 to 12,000, then you have 20,000. Therefore, our semi-variable cost is 20,000 at 100% capacity. So we have 20,000. That is all about note 4. Then we have the note 5. Note 5. Note 5, we were given information about the fixed cost. Fixed cost. You were given the fixed cost to include depreciation. Depreciation of 18,000. Then we have maintenance of 10,000. Then we have insurance of 4,000. We have rates of 15,000. Then we as well have management salaries of 25,000. So you want to consider the fixed cost. You want to consider the fixed cost. Remember, irrespective of the level of activity, the fixed cost must remain the same. Irrespective of the level of activity, the fixed cost must be the same. So we have fixed cost. Fixed cost, and that includes depreciation. Depreciation, our depreciation is 18,000. Since it will be the same for all activities, so you have 18,000 at 80% capacity, 18,000, 18,000. Then after depreciation, we have maintenance. Maintenance, and our maintenance cost is 10,000. Since it is fixed for all levels, each of the capacity, then you have 10,000. Then we also have insurance. Insurance is 4,000. Insurance, and that is 4,000. 4,000 and 4,000. Then we also have rates. Rates amounted to 15,000. 15,000, 15,000, 15,000. Then we also have management salaries. Management salaries. Management salaries, and that amounted to 25,000. 25,000, 25,000, 25,000. Because they are fixed costs. Fixed costs must remain unchanged, irrespective of the level of activity. Back to note 5. Note 5 is all about inflation. Inflation is to be ignored. Inflation is to be ignored. Then we are still on requirement A. After requirement A, then we will consider requirement B, where you have to calculate the budget cost allowance. That is to say, expected expenditure for 2026, assuming that 57,000 direct labor hours are worked. So that is all about the requirement A. Then you sum it up. Let's sum it up. Let's add everything from direct labor, which is 180, 36,000, indirect labor, consumable supplies, Then we have canteen and other welfare. Then which gives us the total variable cost. Then let's add from our total variable cost. So total variable cost. Total variable cost plus semi-variable cost, then plus the fixed cost. Total variable cost plus semi-variable cost, then plus fixed cost. Then we have budget cost. That will give us budget cost. Budget cost. Budget cost. So we have 336, 560. Then the second one 368, 630. Then you sum up the third one. The third one, and that is total 400,700. 400,700. That is all about the requirement A. That is all about the requirement A. Now, we want to attend to the requirement B. B now. In B, you are to calculate the budget cost allowance for 57,000 direct labor hours. Budget cost allowance for 57,000 direct labor hours. If you look at all the cost component, the first section we had the variable cost. The variable cost per unit is always constant. If you look at 80% capacity, our total variable cost was 246,960. If you take your calculator, if you say 246,960 divided by the direct labor hours of 48,000, then we get 5.15145. It will give us you get 5.145 per direct labor hour. That is the variable cost. Let me put it where we had the variable cost. 5.145 per direct labor hour. That is our variable cost per direct labor hour. If you equally take the second one, which is 277,830, divided by the capacity direct labor hour, which is 58,000, divided by 54,000, divided by 54,000, then that will give you 5.145, which is the same. And if you equally take the third one, which is 308,700 divided by 60,000 direct labor hours, then you equally get 5.145. Meaning that the variable cost per unit is always constant. So now, you want to calculate the budget cost allowance for 57,000 direct labor hours. So now, we are going to have the variable cost. And our variable cost now, as calculated, is 5.145. As calculated above, we got 5.145. That is how I got the 5.145 multiplied by the direct labor hours of 57,000 as given in the question, times 57,000. Then you have 293,265. 293,265. Then the next thing is the semi-variable cost. The semi-variable cost. Remember, this semi-variable cost comprises the variable element, and we got the variable cost per unit to be 0.2. Then we also have the fixed cost of 8,000 as calculated using high and low method. So you are going to have semi-variable cost as well. Semi-variable cost comprises the variable element of 0.2 multiplied by direct labor hour, which is 57,000 direct labor hours, plus the fixed element of $8,000, which was obtained from our high and low method. So 57,000 times 0.2, which is our variable cost of 11,400, plus fixed cost of 8,000, then we have 19,400. After that, we have the fixed cost. Our fixed cost, which comprises depreciation of 18,000 plus maintenance of 10,000 plus 4,000 insurance plus 15,000 rates plus management salaries of 25,000. Our total fixed cost is 72,000. Our total fixed cost is 72,000. So we have fixed cost of 72,000. You now sum up the three. You sum up the three, then we have 72,000 plus 19,400 plus 293,265. 293,265. Then we have 384,665. That is the budget cost allowance. Budget cost allowance 384,665. 384,665. So that is for that. Please, this is part one. This is the part one of my presentation on flexible budget. Part two, I will consider the preparation of flexible budget, that where variances will be given. That is performance report. Please, if this is your first time of coming across my channel, or if you have not subscribed before, please don't forget to click on the red subscribe button, and beside it you will see a bell notification icon. Please go ahead to click it so that you will be notified each time I drop a new video. Thanks.